So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Tyson versus Ross Round 2. This is Dapper Reacts 98. I am back with Vishanti. I am no longer all on my lonesome. Unfortunately, Kip Davis couldn't join us today. He had some unfortunate family business to take care of, so we wish him all the best, and hopefully if this goes on to a third round, he can come hang out with us for that one. I don't know to what degree I'm allowed to say exactly what's going on, but he's fine. And yeah, he just had some other obligations. Vishanti, how are you doing?
Man, I'm feeling very energized. My heart and my brain are very full from attending the SBL conference, the Society of Biblical Literature and American Academy of Religion. It was so fun to spend like 4 or 5 days around a bunch of academics and scholars presenting all these great papers, and some of the people that I've been following online for a couple years, I got to hang out with them in person, and that was really cool. Had some great discussions, great food.
That is pretty cool.
Bought some books. I shouldn't spend any money, but they were all on sale. But yeah, it really stirred up my brain and kind of helped me solidify some ideas for papers that I want to publish. And I made some really great connections and have reached out to some academics that I met for potential research possibilities. So I'm really, really super stoked about all that.
Awesome. Well, we are here for something that is actually slightly related. So for those of you who might not have seen Round 1, which we didn't title Round 1, but that's okay. Yeah, exactly. In this, Neil deGrasse Tyson was asked by an interviewer, I don't even remember who it was, doesn't really matter, about the Bible and how it relates to, like, modern science and whatnot. And Tyson's point that he made was basically, if all you had was the Bible, you would not then be able to come up with our modern understanding of how the universe operates. Right? You would get the shape of the Earth wrong, you would get the size of the cosmos wrong, there would be nothing in there that could indicate to you anything about, like, chemistry or atomic physics or relativity or heliocentrism or any of that stuff, right? Like, it would just be completely beyond your ability to figure out if all you had was the Bible. Now, Hugh Ross has come in and said, but I can read science into the Bible. And part of what Tyson was trying to say was the only way to get modern science out of the Bible is to read it into the Bible in the first place. So Hugh Ross is just continuing to show us why it is that Neil deGrasse Tyson is right, in the hopes of showing us how Neil deGrasse Tyson is wrong, which is fun.
I almost forgot to mention. So we were talking about Kip Davis earlier. I actually got to hang out with Kip for some of the conference. So he's a real life human person. He's not a robot.
Okay.
And
wait, did you check to see if he's a robot? Like, because you got to look on the inside. So we know he's not like an AI projection, but he's a physical thing.
He's not AI projection. He has physical changeableness. So we went to a screening of the Satan's Guide to the Bible. It was put on by Satan and the people that made that film. And Matt Monger was there, Aaron Adair, some other scholars. And then there was an actual academic panel, I think Tuesday morning, that reviewed the film, because some of the scholars thought it was hilarious. They quite liked it. Some were kind of nitpicky, quibbling about it. But I rewatched it the other day, and I only, like, towards the end where there's a couple things I would have quibbled about.
Yeah,
but otherwise it was really, really solid.
Yeah, overall I think it's pretty solid.
They gave out free wine.
Nice. Yeah, if you haven't seen Satan's Guide to the Bible, it's pretty good. I do have some quibbles towards the end. There's one big argument that they make that, like, because Paul doesn't mention the empty tomb, Paul didn't believe in the past resurrection of Jesus, and I'm like, I don't see how this argument is supposed to follow. So that
was a little.
That's like my only big quibble with it, though. Is just like right at the end there, that one last argument. I'm like, this is pretty weak.
Vulpix in the chat was saying he's a real-life human person. I thought he was Canadian. He is very Canadian. Lots of apologizing. I took it upon myself to introduce him to Southern Hot Chicken. So there is a chain called Houston Hot Chicken, and I love hot chicken. I've eaten at Prince's in Nashville, which is my absolute favorite. And I was like, Kip, if you leave America without having eaten hot chicken, I will have failed miserably. But he did actually eat tacos a lot, so he was doing it right. Yeah.
All right, we got a few things here. So, in case you guys don't know, we do import the drinking rules over from Tuesdays. I am drinking a pineapple margarita, which, by the way, everything I'm drinking today is a little... Oh, we got a drink from Mothra. So first we'll drink from Mothra.
I didn't hear Mothra.
You didn't hear Mothra? Does everyone... Okay. No. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put in here... we're going to put in... Engage with your audience. Start a poll. Did you hear Mothra? All right, that's the poll that we're going to start. So first, we are going to drink for Mothra, because Mothra came by. I don't care if Vishanti heard her or not. She did. Also, yes is at 91%.
Trust you, but
I feel like you don't. I feel like you're telling me how much of a liar I am. Also, I don't know why we're at 18, so that's going to be a Dapper as a professional once I fix that. So, give me a second.
Roshina, I can't read the rest of this. Math is made up something Keller gave a super chat for $4.99 reading Vishanti check Kip for finger holes and he's no puppet. I did not. That would be inappropriate.
I mean, look, I don't know what you guys get up to over your SBL and checking for finger holes. I don't know, whatever. Well, here's one for Mothra. Here's one for Dapper as a professional. And then, before we went live, Ben Thick Tunicate gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. So here's 1, 2...
Oh, they're saying that I'm a little quiet. By the way.
I have you up to 200% on Discord, and I have your gain boosted by about 25 decibels, so there's not a whole lot else I can do. So, 3...
Okay.
4... Oh, now I can't hear you at all.
Really?
Yep, couldn't hear you. And here's 5. And then, Lieutenant Fitz of Rage has gifted another membership. In case you guys want that particular joke explained, which, ruins it. Over on my other channel, Top Hats Off, we are running a Star Trek Adventures campaign, and Star Trek Adventures involves the ability to roll up what are called supporting characters. They're not the main cast, but they're player characters. And when there's no particular reason for a main character to be in a scene, because, like, maybe you're the chief engineer, but this is a scene in, like, an alien hospital ward where you're trying desperately to stop a plague, and your engineer doesn't have anything to do there. So you can roll up, like, a nurse character to help out, assist with that scene. And because we just recently unlocked channel memberships, now when we roll up new supporting characters, we try to name them after one of the channel members. So the first supporting character that we did with that was Lieutenant Fitz, who is part of the engineering department, because our regular engineer, Craig, his character was off at sensitivity training on Vulcan because of his repeated lack of sensitivity. Yeah, well, okay, he's half Telluride.
I unplugged my mic and plugged it back in. Hopefully that will be better, and I made an attempt to up the gain a little bit on my end, but we'll see. They're just saying that you're just extremely loud today, so...
Oh, I'm extreme? I can turn myself down.
JS is asking where is Kip. He had some family obligations to handle, so...
Yeah.
If we end up not getting all the way through this video this week, we will make an attempt to finish.
We probably won't get through this one. We've got like 30 minutes left on this. But hey, let's get going into it. So we were just being told by this guy that you have to use an established scientific method to look at the Bible. And I don't know what that means, or how that would help, or anything about that. But, Roshan Math has made up numbers, Keller says. How dirty can we be in drink triggers? Well, there are community guidelines here on YouTube. I would prefer to stay on the good side of them. So, please don't make me fall on the wrong side of those. But then again, I mean, YouTube does have, like, adult toy reviews and nude yoga, so, like, who knows what anything means anymore.
So, I'm gonna just casually drop some anecdotes from the SBL conference throughout this stream. I'm gonna save a lot of them, because Kip and I are gonna try to do, like, a debrief in a few days, but I will say that one of my favorite things that I picked up at the conference was from the Whip and Stock booth. They are famous for having a bowl full of lip balm. Quite literally one of the absolute minimum things that I keep on me at all times. So if, like, I'm joking around with you and I say I keep that thing on me, I'm talking about lip balm. And the Whip and Stock lip balm it's flavored with, like, some sort of berries or whatever, but it does its job quite nicely. So thank you, Whip and Stock.
Well, here we go. All right, here we go.
And what you're saying is, no, he didn't do that because you have at least two parts of the scientific method that he actually didn't employ.
He, in this case, is Tyson.
In making his conclusions. And so I really appreciated that. That was something that was, honestly, if you just tuned in and you tune out, right after that, that's enough. That's worth it all by itself to say, this is the kind of thing you need to assess. These are the frameworks you need to assess. So that was a tremendous help to us.
He basically just said nothing that whole time. I was listening to the whole previous part of this talk, and he's just talking about the scientific method and applying it to the text, and none of this means anything. For context, by the way, this guy is a lawyer, so he's a lawyer, which isn't like a textual critic or a historian, talking to a astrophysicist, who again isn't a like textual critic or a historian, about using the scientific method on an ancient text, which isn't an appropriate thing to do, and it's all sorts of crazy.
So if I could, just for a moment, go back and just give a little backfill in terms of your background, in terms of why it is that you are qualified to say what the scientific method is. I mean, obviously you're a scientist, but I want to give a little bit of educational background and then your experience as well. Not only as someone who is a scientist, but someone who actually interprets the biblical text and has
Ben Thick Tunicate for £2 says AIG are a noxious network of knockwursts, each one starting with a K. Thank you very much. We will take a drink for that.
Staryu asks, okay, but when is Vishanti writing a book?
Yeah, Vishanti, when are you writing a book?
I'm not much for writing books, but I do write essays, and having spent a weekend amongst a whole cadre of scholars and academics, it's making me want to really knuckle down and get things published. So,
do you know what they call enough essays put together? Yes. Okay. I just thought we should clear the air about that part.
Experience doing
but I will need to publish at least some papers in order to compile them.
No, actually, it turns out you don't have to publish anything else besides just a book, as we have seen with all the crazy nonsense books that have been published. All you have to do is just write a whole bunch and then convince some idiot to publish it. That's it.
I mean, I have some integrity, so I'm gonna try to go
All right, I suppose. But just remember, Raw Matt and Donnie Badinsky have managed to publish just screen caps of Google Docs as books that you can buy physically.
I'm also not an ordained Essene, so that...
Yeah. Are you an unordained Essene?
I am not an Essene.
Not at all? Wow. Well, you might want to start working on that ordination to the Essenate.
Okay.
Writings you've had. So let's start with your educational background. Walk us through your educational background, and then I'll ask a couple of questions too about what you've been doing.
So I want everyone to pay attention for all of the things that he tells us that are about like ancient languages, like Hebrew and Ugaritic, and maybe like Akkadian, Greek, that kind of stuff. We want to look at things like historical stuff, like ancient Near East history, maybe Egyptian history if you want to interface with like like the Exodus and stuff like that. So keep your ears open. I don't know, peeled. I don't know how ears work. Whatever. Just keep using your ears. Don't worry about it. Keep paying attention with your ears, and we'll see if he has any relevant credentials. Because to be fair, Dr. Hugh Ross has a legitimate PhD and does real science that he publishes in real science journals, right? Like, he is an actual scientist.
Degrees are just not in biblical studies.
We don't know that yet. He hasn't told us. You're just
Okay.
That's a prediction though. So if that's true, then we'll take a drink for it. A Star You for 199 says Uncooked Matthew published a book, Darwin's Beard. Well, okay, so he has books that you can physically purchase as print to order on Amazon. Which means
Dapper,
yes.
I motion that your next available emoji slot should be Darwin with sunglasses on. The deal with it sunglasses. Can I get a second in the chat?
Yeah, let's see if we can get a second in the chat, and I will take a look as to how many more memberships we would need to get another emoji, because I don't actually know, because it's been a while since I checked, and it's been a while since we were close. So let's see. Memberships. Roshina, math is made up numbers. Keller for 499 says, did Raw Matt's book include his fake published paper? I don't believe that it did. However, it did include truncated hyperlinks that, if you get the color version of the book, are still blue and underlined, and then just end with an ellipse. And that's it. That's how he cites things on the book, because they're just screen caps of Google Docs files. Which, it's fine to have a truncated hyperlink in a Google Docs file, because it's going to be saved as the hyperlink. But,
An attempt was made.
Yeah. Alright. So let's take a look.
I hear a second. Yay.
Oh, there we go. Alright, so, really? It says we need 7 more members. Alright, well, I guess if we get 7 more members, then, according to YouTube, who has lied about this before, so if we get 7 members and it doesn't work, blame YouTube. But if we can get 7 more members, according to YouTube, we can get another emoji, and we can make we can have Darwin with the deal with it glasses. Okay, so here we go.
Makes sense.
Well, I have an undergraduate degree in physics from the University of British Columbia,
Mm-hmm.
and went on to get a master's and PhD in astronomy
Mm-hmm.
from the University of Toronto, and did 5 years of postdoctoral research on quasars and galaxies.
Which actually sounds super cool, by the way. Like,
Yeah.
that's really awesome. Also, Shona just skipped the Dapper Dinosaur membership. Thank you very much. Oh, and there's Mothra, so let's take 2 drinks. 1
Hear her.
and
So
2.
mad.
Hey, remember that time that you told me that there was too much noise in my Discord, and then I increased the amount of noise cancellation? This is a direct result. I just want to let you know.
Thanks for blaming me. I appreciate that.
No, I'm blaming Discord. You tertiary blame.
Thanks.
Yeah. And as we all know, the real person to blame is Kent Hovind.
At the California Institute of Technology. So that's my
Oh, he
scientific
went to
background.
Caltech.
But I also
Well, he did postdoc work there. Technically, that's not
Cool.
going, but yeah.
had the experience when I was in high school of participating in what's called the Berg Science Seminars.
Okay, where's the ancient languages stuff? Who taught you Hebrew? Who taught you Greek? Did you learn any other?
Taught you math.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I know, he's actually really good at math. But like, Dr. Ross, who taught you any of the things that would allow you to interpret the Bible on anything other than a superficial level?
That was a Kiss Kiss Bang Bang reference.
Oh, I missed it. Sorry. Oh my goodness, there's Godzilla.
I heard part of Godzilla.
And Mothra. My goodness, they're trying to get us killed. All right, well, 2 more. All right, here we go.
What they did is they took kind of our particular interest and then spread it out. So I got a lot of exposure in the other disciplines of science. And that's kind of my primary role at Reasons to Believe, is to integrate the different disciplines in science and try to put them together in a coherent picture.
Okay, so your prediction was that there wouldn't be any actual relevant education to biblical interpretation, Vishanti. And I heard a lot of really cool stuff, but none of it was relevant to biblical interpretation. So that is a successful prediction, and we're going to take a drink for it.
And you see that expressed in the 23 books that I've written.
Anyone who tells you how many books they've written is probably someone who has some snake oil to sell you. Because normally, if people want to actually convince you of something, they just give you the reasons you should be convinced, rather than saying, well, look how many books I've written. And again, you know what it takes to write a book? Vomiting enough words onto a page. That's technically it. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't take a lot of skill to be a good author, but there's a difference between writing a good book and writing a book. Those are not the same thing. Goopdo3 for $2 says, I thought the person to blame was AIG with a bag and a eggplant emoji, and we all know what that means. It means we take a drink. All right. Actually, I sent to a friend of mine once when I was making some eggplant parm. I'm like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm cooking. What are you cooking? So I sent an eggplant. And they were like, wait. I was like, what? I was like, don't you know what that... I'm like, it's the actual eggplant. I'm actually cooking eggplant. Oh yeah, I forgot that was an eggplant and not just a dick. Like, yep, it turns out it's not actually literally that emoji. Raushina Math is made up numbers. Keller for $1.99 says, Armando Calvo wrote 2 books. There's a good point. Actually, didn't... it's like he wrote 2.5 or something. Well, yeah, I mean, he plagiarized. He had several books.
With the copyright.
It's true. He did check with the copyright. My Unfinished Journey has just gifted a Dapper Dinosaur membership. Thank you very much. We'll take a drink for that.
Saw somebody in Logic's comments earlier was talking about how apparently he seemed to think that plagiarism was just calling someone a bad word and didn't really seem to grasp that that's an actual thing that he needs to know about so that he can avoid doing it.
Oh no, he just thought it was being mean to people, basically?
Pretty much.
Oh.
That was their take, and I was like, I can't disagree. That did seem to be how he was understanding it.
Well, that at least explains why people were pointing out blatant plagiarism. He's like, it's not plagiarized, you guys. It's like, what do you mean? You literally took whole chunks out of a book and didn't cite it. And didn't put it in quotation marks, or in any way indicate that it wasn't yours. I guess that he just fundamentally didn't understand what plagiarism was in the first place. That would explain a lot of his behavior. Yeah. Thank you for all the copyright emojis, Vulpix.
Okay, and those 23 books you've written, I've read quite a few of them. One of which
he's written more books than Paul.
Thought of immediately as soon as I heard Dr. deGrasse Tyson's objection was Navigating Genesis. You do a careful walkthrough. Essentially, the starting point you started with in terms of frame of reference and these kind of things.
So the frame of reference thing is, Hugh Ross likes this idea about how to interpret Genesis 1 as if you are a person standing on the surface of the Earth as it forms according to things like the nebular hypothesis. And then he says that the order of creation is the order in which you would see things if you were standing on the Earth. He's wrong about that, but he does use that interpretive framework. And the thing is, that does help him harmonize scientific understandings of the origin of Earth and the solar system with what's presented in Genesis 1. But remember, in order to get to that point, you have to already know what scientific explanations there are for the formation of the solar system and Earth in particular. If all you have is the Bible, which is the point Tyson was making in the first place, you would never get to that position, because nothing in the text indicates that this is just some kind of phenomenological description of the nebular hypothesis occurring over the course of millions of years. Nothing about the text of Genesis 1 indicates that at all. You are free to interpret it that way, because I don't get to control how you interpret texts. But remember, the only way Ross can get there is by taking the science first, and then twisting whatever he needs to in the text to get it to roughly fit the science. Which was Tyson's whole point.
You talk about, but you actually explode into great detail in Navigating Genesis. Do you have any works that you're working on right now that respond to these kinds of objections about, we have to reinterpret the Bible in order to make it fit science and maybe...
That's not an objection. That's just Hugh Ross's whole job. And I'm not saying it's a bad job. I'm just saying don't pretend that's not what you're doing, right? I would be much happier with Ross if he just acknowledged, yeah, these are not traditional interpretations that I'm giving, and this is probably not what the author intended, but it's how I harmonize a text that I use for devotional purposes with what I know as a result of science. Okay, I don't get to tell you how to interpret the text that you're using for devotional purposes, right? That's not my job. Do it however you want. As long as you don't then use it as an excuse to hurt people. But, like, yeah. Look, if you want to reinterpret the Bible to say that it's actually about the nebular hypothesis, okay, cool. If you want to interpret, like, the hadith about Muhammad splitting the moon to say that it's actually talking about when, like, Theia collided with Earth, and that's actually what's going on there, I don't think you're right about that as being what he was talking about, but I also don't really care if that's what you think. Like, go for it. Have fun. I don't... whatever. Just don't pretend that you're not reinterpreting things. Be honest with yourself about this.
Because we're sort of either embarrassed by it or whatever it
Right.
might mean. So do you have anything you've written about it contemporaneously?
Well, just like I integrate the different scientific disciplines, my approach to theology is integrating the 66 books of the Bible. Don't draw a conclusion till you've actually read.
Oh, we had a Keller Italian said, who's been a member for 28 months at the EMEO level, said when he was in high school in like the 1960s, and then also said that they forgot how far behind they were. And that was supposed to be about Ross. So played on like 1.5 or times 2 speed. That's how I catch up to lives. Although, honestly, lives are often too slow for me, and so I just wait until they're like an hour in, and then I hop in at times 2 speed. So
yeah, it really sucks because I normally listen to videos at minimum 1.25, and especially now that YouTube's given you the ability to customize how fast, so I can put it on 1.3 or something like that. People just talk way too freaking slow for me.
I just default to times 2. That's where I start.
And having grown up in the Deep South, that's pretty ironic for me to say, but I ain't got time for that.
Yeah, well, you shed a lot of your Deep South, like, dialect, so.
I did. The only time I didn't neuter it as much during the conference because it was amusing to me. But last night I started watching Little Bubby Child clips, and that is extremely Appalachian, like mountain folk accent, and it was I had to go to sleep and wake up to reset because I couldn't shake it.
Nice.
I love you and I miss you. I think about you every day. Every day.
All right, here we go.
Everything that's in the 66 books. And so I did that in Navigating Genesis, saying, okay, let's go through the first 11 chapters, but let's pull in the content from the other 65 books. I did that with the science content in the book of Job. And the most recent book I've just finished, it's not yet released.
Scoffs and Deuterocanon.
What's the scientific content in the book of Job? What does that mean? Because, like, it's basically... The only part I ever see people talk about in terms of science is basically the part of the narrative where God is like, hey man, look how cool I am. I did this. Which, like, okay, what science do we glean from that? Like, do we then... Because, I mean, remember, Job says that God has storehouses of, like, snow and rain up in heaven, and that's how precipitation works, is that God opens up his warehouses that carry the precipitation in them, and he dumps them through the dome of Earth onto the flat Earth. Right? That's what you would get if all you had was the Bible, like Tyson was talking about. You would get a flat Earth out of Job. A flat Earth where there's a God who has physical places where he stores up rain and snow in buildings, and then he opens up gates in a dome, a solid dome, to let those through. Sure, you can find some way to harmonize that with modern science if you want to. But again, if all you had was the Bible, you would not come to a modern understanding of things like climate science or meteorology. Prixie Purple, who's been a member for 9 months and is at the Tetrapod level, says, I need times 3 speed on YouTube, except when live chatting. So, you can actually open up the HTML console and manually inject some code to increase the speed beyond 2. I don't have it memorized how to do it. Every time I want to, I have to look it up. But, like, it is a possibility. If you just Google, like, 3x speed YouTube or something, you should pull up a tutorial on how to inject that code directly into your browser. And you can do that if you want to. I do it sometimes if I'm looking at a video where someone is speaking very slowly. Because
Ugh.
usually times 2 is enough for me. But, hey.
Completed is a book called Defending Inerrancy, a scientific perspective on that. And so I basically look at the recent challenge to the 2 books doctrine that you just mentioned, how God reveals himself through both the book of nature and the book of scripture. That doctrine is coming under serious assault today, both within the church and outside the church. And I mentioned by name in the book as one guy who's, not really getting it right.
Speaking of speeding up, I just put him on 1.3 because this is getting slow.
So I figured
Thank you.
I'm going to provide a defense for both the doctrine of dual revelation and the doctrine of biblical inerrancy.
I'm actually a little bit curious how he defends biblical inerrancy, because the thing is, unless you're willing to just basically dictate what the Bible is going to say and ignore parts of the Bible in favor of other parts of the Bible, you really can't defend inerrancy. Or I guess if you just don't read the Bible, in which case I guess you're not defending it so much as just being willfully ignorant of what's in the Bible. Let's see, My Unfinished Journey for $6.66 says, "Hail Nero, hail Daps, and hail Vishanti. Still appreciate Ross for giving me Old Earth Creationist way to read Genesis when I was a Southern Baptist, and glad to see the criticism." Yeah, look, here's the thing, right? I would not be doing this unless it were couched in specifically the way that this is, right? Where Ross is going to try to say why Neil deGrasse Tyson specifically is wrong about whether or not you could get a modern scientific understanding from just the Bible, right? If all this was Ross saying, here's how I harmonize the Bible and science, I would just say, okay, cool. Have fun with that. I don't, it's not a thing that I care about. But because he's going for that specifically, you could get modern science out of the Bible with just the Bible. Yeah, I have a problem with that, because you absolutely can't, and that is just spreading misinformation. Pillowpunk, half dog, half canine, who has been a member for 17 months and is at the tetrapod level, says, "Looking for science content in Aesop's Fables next." Exactly, right?
No kidding.
Yeah. Also, here's a fun thing. It actually turns out that... take a drink for Godzilla.
I can't hear your kaiju.
I'm sorry. It also turns out that scorpions don't just sting everything. That's not actually how scorpions act in real life. Weird, right? Yeah. Let's see.
Oh my god, I have to tell you this. I was listening to some people at a convention talk about working with scorpions on set, and the scorpion was brought in specifically because the person was arachnophobic. And they get to set, and they were just like, "Oh my god, this looks a lot like a spider," and I'm sitting there screaming, "Because it's an arachnid, you fool!"
Right, there's a reason for that.
My goodness.
They should have brought in a tailless whip scorpion. That looks even more like a spider.
Yeah, I think that's what it was, actually.
Oh,
like,
okay.
"Hey, how do you feel about this one?" And they sent a photo, and it's like, it still looks like a spider, because it's an arachnid.
Yeah. Alright, we got a couple memberships were gifted. One by My Unfinished Journey, and one by Prixie Purple, so we'll take a couple drinks for that. Thank you very much. Alright, and then Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith for $5 says, "The Clear Eyes guy would be easier to listen to than this guy." Oh, Ben Stein, yeah. Ben Stein is a weird character, because like he did that whole intelligent design documentary, and like before that, his reputation was all based on basically him being like boring but smart. And it was like, I don't know how much I buy the smart after that. Yeah.
Yeah. He was definitely part of like the zeitgeist brain rot wave.
Oh man.
It sucks.
I can't stand zeitgeist. So much dumb stuff.
So dumb.
One of these days I should take a look at just the astronomy claims of zeitgeist, because they're really bad. Like it claims that
the whole thing is just painful.
The Zeitgeist astronomy section claims that the sun goes into the southern Crux Australis during the period around the winter solstice and stays there unmoving for 3 days, and none of that is true.
No!
The sun never goes into Crux Australis. It never stays still in the sky. Like, all of it's wrong. And it's all just based on, hey, did you notice that Jesus is called the Son of God, and that son in English, as in male offspring, sounds the same as sun, as in the big bright ball in the sky? It's like, yeah, let's base it in the entire, like, imagine this. Okay, it's the 1st century. We're a bunch of Jewish people sitting around saying like, hey, let's make up like a messianic version of our Second Temple Judaism. And
we use English homophones.
Right, and we'll base the entire thing on a pun in a language that won't exist for like 800 more years. That's what we're gonna do. That's not how anything works, ever. If anything, that's harder to believe than just taking the New Testament literally. Roshina, math is made up numbers. Keller for $4.99 says, I still use the Bible's modern science cure for leprosy. Yes, bring a dove to a priest, get the blood smeared on you. That will clear up any kind of skin problems you have. Don't actually do that, by the way. It's probably not sanitary, and it won't actually cure your skin conditions.
The parts about like washing yourself after contact with like dead things.
Good idea.
Quarantining and masking when you're feeling sick, that's also good advice, but most of the rest of that I don't recommend.
What about quarantining when you're on your period?
You certainly feel like quarantining. You don't want to go anywhere.
It's like, was it actually bad advice? Maybe just hanging out at home is actually what you need.
I mean, I feel like people who menstruate should get like 3 days minimum once a month to cope, personally.
Yeah. Pillapunk, half dog, half canine for $5 says, significant other to tailless whip scorpions for being... Oh, wait. No, shout out. That's why the flash is there. I was like, this doesn't make sense. Sorry, shout out to tailless whip scorpions for being weird, cool, non-venomous, and native to North America. Gonna be one of my favorite arachnids. No, they are really cool. I'm a pretty big fan of the tailless whip scorpions. Also, they were used as the deadliest spider in the world in the Harry Potter movies, which annoyed me because they're completely harmless. But like,
man, people just stay ruining perfectly good animals.
I know. To be fair though, they do look super scary because they have a lot of little spiky bits on their pedipalps, and like, ooh, they are.
Yeah, not a fan.
And they can get big, which doesn't help their reputation any. So.
I don't know if the chat is aware of this, but I have like sort of an ongoing truce or understanding with arachnids. I am perfectly fine with them existing as long as they do it outside my field of vision. As soon as they are in my field of vision, it's on site.
I see.
They will most likely get squished. So, hey, eat the ants, eat the mosquitoes, all the other pests. Do your thing. I respect you. Thank you for your part in the, ecological web, but just don't let me see you doing it. It's the one thing I ask.
Mendigiki, Platypus Monk Princess has gifted a membership. Thank you very much. We'll take a drink for that. And then Roshina Math has made up numbers Keller for $1.99 says Taylor Swift scorpions. Yes, that is definitely what I said. Taylor Swift scorpions.
Excellent.
Not Taylor Swift scorpions. Yeah. Which, by the way, calling them tailless whip scorpions when whip scorpions are only called that because of the tail is really bizarre to me.
Yeah. Cheeseless hamburgers.
Right. Or you mean, yeah, just call them amlophidids.
Why? Just, yeah.
Anyway.
So that book will be out within a few months.
Well, we'll look forward to that, very much so. Well, one thing you did, and you anticipated sort of where this is going, so you've made a great lawyer as well, by the way, Hugh, is when you look at, so the parole evidence rule, which tries to exclude extraneous evidence from what a document actually means, doesn't exclude looking at other parts of the document to determine what a particular clause means. In fact, when we do contract interpretation or statutory...
Objection! Univocality.
Yeah, that's the thing. The Bible isn't a document. It is a collection of documents of various number, depending on who you are, right? Because remember, Hugh Ross likes the 66-book Bible, but that's not most people's Bible.
Size and Deuterocanon.
Yeah, most people have a canon that's wider, at least among Christianity. And then
cooler.
If you go outside Christianity, you get a smaller canon, a much smaller canon, in the case of Jews.
I got to listen to a whole ass paper this past weekend on Judith, and it was great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did it involve, where the capital city of various empires actually is? Because Judith gets that super wrong.
It was about the dynamics of slavery and how even though Judith is presented as somebody who herself lives within a structure of like hierarchy and slavery or whatever, she still had a slave who was, helping her along in the narrative. And they had a lot to say about just because one person is allowed a certain amount of power in a structure doesn't mean that the structure isn't still there or harmful to other people that are lower down. It was really good.
Or even to the person in question. Because there are definitely ways in which to do this takes a lot of action and takes a lot of agency in the narrative. But there are also plenty of ways in which she is not allowed to have agency or take action.
Exactly. Yeah, so. I can't wait. Some of these are going to be published very soon, and I'll be sure to get the word out. But
by the way, everybody, I'm sorry. Go read Judith. It's a fun read.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Catholic or Orthodox, basically if you're not Protestant and you're Christian, it's probably in your Bible. And if you are Protestant, you can find it for free online. Just go look it up. It's a fun story.
Yeah, and I would also say that it is a very timely response to the misogynist Nick Fuentes crap of Your Body, My Choice, because that's exactly what Judith does to Holofernes.
Star Song for $5 says, I love jumping spiders. I just fear accidentally squishing them. Yeah, that's a valid concern. You know that the way that spiders extend their legs is by pressurizing their legs with extra hemolymph? They don't actually have muscles that extend their legs. They have muscles that retract their legs. Then to extend them, they actually just pump extra blood into their legs. And it swells up with hydrostatic pressure. I know.
I don't.
But that's also why when you squish a spider, the legs curl up. Because they lost all the pressure that would keep them extended. And so all that happens is the muscles kind of relax into a curled position.
So you just deflate them.
Yeah, literally.
That's cursed.
Yeah, it's super weird. Mine Finished Sock for $2 says, yikesy eisegesis equals yikesegesis. Like and share.
Yikesegesis.
And then Jester, who's been a member for 13 months and is at the amulet level, says, but why would you want a small cannon when you can have a big bag of booms? Yeah, bigger cannon is better. Which is why the one true religion is, in fact, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church.
The Tawahedo cannon.
Yeah. So...
Isn't it, it's not Chinese, isn't it one of the Korean or East Asian, traditions that has just, thousands of text in its canon?
Yeah, the Taoist. The Taoist canon is
the Taoist. Yeah. Okay, I was close.
Absolutely gigantic.
That one's the biggest.
Although
they have much boom.
If you conceptualize it as a canon in the same way as biblical canon, you're misunderstanding the Taoist canon. So
yeah, I mean, trying to apply Western definitions to things that aren't Western is just not.
Or really just Christian definitions to anything that isn't Christianity.
Well.
Roshina Math is made up numbers Keller for $1.99 says AIG is a sack of things you pump extra blood into. Like spider legs, for instance. We'll take a drink. Just think about it. Every time a spider walks, it's actually giving alternating erections to every one of its 8 legs.
Please stop! Oh my god, I hate this.
Interpretation in the law, we have to look at the whole thing, because a word may be used in one way, in one sense, in one part of the contract, then you use it in a completely different sense in another part of the contract, and it might seem like they either contradict or conflict, but when you look at the whole corpus of the document, you see actually they're quite in harmony with each other.
No, you don't, though. What you're actually doing is you're using other parts of different texts to override what the text says in the first place. That's not the same thing. If it were one text, written by one author, then maybe you would have a case there. But that's not what the Bible is. And there are also cases where the Bible just flatly contradicts itself.
Yeah, I mean, even single books aren't written by a single author.
Well, it depends on the book.
Yeah, Genesis, for instance, it's got old poetry and songs. It's got later redactions from the priestly author. Then there's the non-peace or anyway. Yeah.
There are some books in there that are basically just the work of one author, but for the most part, most of them are composite works to some degree. And even the ones that we can assign an author to usually have some redaction history and some history of having been altered before we get them today in a way that we don't really have a great way to recover. Which is one of those weird things when people say, what did the book originally say? It's I don't know.
What? Yeah, that was another conversation that people had at this conference, was that they were questioning the idea of an or text, just period, with a lot of things.
Yeah. With some things, it's
That
pretty clear that there was.
The transmission history is just part of the document. There may not have been an original.
Yeah, like what does it mean to say the original version of Genesis? Like probably nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Now with other books, like what does this mean to say like the original version of like First Corinthians? Okay, we probably have a way that we can talk about that meaningfully. But like for a lot of the Bible, we just don't. And Job is part of that, right? Like Job has at least 2 authors. Yeah. The whole ending of Job, where Job gets a happy ending, that's at least
3, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And even with some texts like David, like what's your authoritative text on David? Because the Masoretic text has a longer text for David, or not David, sorry, Joshua. I'm thinking of Joshua.
Yeah.
And like, so do we include like the Song of Susanna and Bel and the Dragon in the text? Like, it's up to you.
What about that 151st Psalm?
Yeah, what about it? I have at least one Bible with a 151st Psalm in it. It's in the Masoretic text. What are we going to do? I don't know. All right. My Unfinished Journey has gifted another Dapper Dinosaur membership, so we will take a drink for that. Thank you very much.
Hey, went to April Van Ryn. Yay!
Nice. All right, here we go.
So you have to look at the whole thing. And so I would re-object to what Dr. Tyson has done.
Wait, it was Daniel. I was talking about Daniel the whole time, and I kept mixing it up. I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm talking about. You know what? I blame this Pineapple Margarita, 10% alcohol by volume.
Okay.
Yeah, it's stronger than what I normally drink for this.
Which is to say, let's isolate one part of the document and say it has to mean this, and not look at the full document to find out if it's actually what it means. And so
But that's the thing. The document is a book of the Bible at best. And even then, those are usually actually multiple documents that have been stitched together into the text that we have now. So there's no such thing as the document that you can look at. At best, you can say, well, someone made a recension of the text that composed Genesis. What did that guy have in mind? Okay, sure. You can ask that question. But the thing is, he's also not the guy who wrote Job. So if you want to import something from Job in order to explain what happens in Genesis, it's kind of like importing something from Lord of the Rings to explain what happens in Harry Potter. You can do it, but like, there's no obvious reason why that's an appropriate thing to do. It seems inappropriate, but I can't stop you.
I really wish that I was in a better financial spot, because I saw at least one book at the SBL exhibition tables that was talking about the theology of Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
And it was like a substantially sized book, and I thought, oh my god, I know at least 6 people that would want to read this.
Yeah, to me, it's surprising the degree to which it both is and isn't reflective of Tolkien's Catholicism in different ways. Because, he was a staunch Catholic, and he was actually pretty disappointed when C.S. Lewis joined the Church of England rather than Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Because he was like, why not just be a Catholic? Come on.
Why can't you just join mine?
Yeah.
I mean, we are called Catholic for a reason, man.
Chesterton joined the Catholic Church. Why don't you?
God, G.K. Chesterton. Anyway.
So, yeah, there was. Anyway. Also, he hated how on the nose the Chronicles of Narnia were. He was like, you can't just put Jesus in your book. And there's Lewis like, the hell I can't.
Yeah, he was like, man, come on, your allegories have to be a lot more subtle than that. And C.S. Lewis is like, well, what if I do anyway?
Yeah, it's like, this line is literally Jesus. Deal with it.
It's literally Jesus, yeah.
Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith for $2 says, but didn't God write the entire Bible? No, in fact. We can identify human authors for the entirety of the Bible.
What cosplay was worn?
Let's read the whole thing. So, Roshan and Mathis made up numbers. Keller for $1.99 says, what cosplay was worn at the SBL conference?
So there wasn't cosplay, but lots of people were in their tradition's religious garb. Okay. There are panels and programming tracks for Sikh, Buddhism. Some were on Islam. It depends. So we saw some clergy and people who.
I make the argument
traditional garb.
Virtually all religious garb is actually cosplay of historical formal wear from a previous time.
Sure. There were some Christian clergy from various traditions that had their particular garb. The closest you're going to get to cosplay was seeing hilarious t-shirts, and I got to give this one to Dan Beecher. It was irreverent, and it made me laugh. On the last day of the convention, he rolled into the conference with a shirt, and on the front of it, in rainbow letters, it said, "Wake up, sluts, it's time to sin."
I saw that one. That was good.
However, there are some academics that were posting on Blue Sky talking about, like, hey, we need some people to do cosplay. And I went, I'm your person! I'll do it! I'm your Huckleberry.
My sister once tried to make a costume that was of Dorcas, and all that happened was she got made fun of for the name. That's all that happened. Yeah. Plus, what is that costume? It's just a robe.
Yeah, it was just a robe.
Yeah, because, like, who is Dorcas? She's just some lady from the New Testament from, like, 1st century, like, area around Judea. What do you do for that as a costume?
Would love to make some sort of mobile chair apparatus, like an actual Merkava, and put the eyeballs and the wheels and the wings and stuff on it, and then just roll around the conference like that.
I like that.
Behold one of the Ophanim.
You just gotta get a loud speaker thing and just keep saying, "Do not fear. Do not be afraid," as you roll through the conference.
I could have it playing infrasound the whole time, so that people just get nervous for no reason and don't know why.
I like that. Star Song for $10 says, people say the Bible is true because the Tigris and Euphrates rivers exist. If I take that argument, then the Masters series must be true because London, England exists. Yeah, that's always been one of the weirder things. It's like, well, the Bible mentions things that are real. Like, yeah. And?
What books take place in New York City? That doesn't make them real.
Yeah, like, it's... If it never mentioned any place that we knew where the location was, then sure, I would be suspicious of its historicity more than I normally am. But, like, it's trivially easy to put in known geographical parts of the world into your fiction if you're trying to write fiction, which I actually don't think is an appropriate thing to call most of the Bible. I don't think actually most of it falls into the genre of fiction. I do happen to think Judith does, as we were talking about earlier. I do think Judith, in fact, is, I would say, one of our earliest examples of something that could reasonably be called historical fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So, like...
I think Esther is a good case, too.
Yeah, it's less clear to me, but
that one,
certainly a possibility.
I didn't really get to... There's so much going on at any one time. You can't possibly go to everything, but there were some conversations about the literary nature of Esther, like the Ishtar, and then Mordecai and Marduk, that whole thing. Like, people have talked about this many times before, but I really wish that I could have gone to that and heard them dig in a little more, because that's stuff I'm still learning about, so...
Orthosaurus says, how do I get ads on live streams, bro? So I have it set to actually show ads, but at the lowest rate available. And the reason I'm doing that is because, well, I have to do things like pay bills and buy food, and also occasionally buy things just for me to, you know, like, use recreationally so that I don't go crazy. So...
Oh, Jake Nelson says, Judith, I love A Perfect Circle. Me too. Martyrdom was a great album.
All right, here we go.
Helped us with that, with the Book of Job, for example, and the frames of reference and these kind of things. So let's take a look, if I could just really quick at one thing with regard to, like, for example, the stars falling from the skies in Revelation. Now you have, in one sense, he has looked at the whole document. He says, okay, look at Genesis, the beginning, look at Revelation, the end.
You cannot use Revelation to interpret Genesis or vice versa. I'm sorry. Like, those are completely different texts written, like, a millennium
Centuries apart.
Yeah, by very different authors, for very different purposes, in very different circumstances, in very different cultures.
Totally different genres, like...
Right. Like, I'm sorry, but no. And it's true that the author of Revelation has, as background knowledge, what we would call, from, like, a Christian context, the Old Testament, by, like, largely through the lens of the Masoretic text. But, like, that does not mean that you get to use these to interpret each other. In fact, when it comes to canonicity, hey, did you know that Revelation had about as much trouble as anything else getting in there? And more so than most things.
It only got in by the skin of its teeth.
Yeah, and in fact, I am on record as saying I wish it hadn't.
I honestly, because of how much damage it's caused, I kind of agree.
And not just in, like, historically, like, in the recent past. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it was not that long ago that people were, like, what was that one guy's name who was like, oh, the end is coming, and then people started, like, selling all their houses. It was recent. The guy died not too long
Harold
afterwards.
Camping.
Yeah, Harold Camping.
Yeah.
Right? Harold Camping convinced thousands of people to sell their homes, to quit their jobs, to do nothing but spread the word about the coming of the apocalypse and how everyone needs to get saved and be prepared for the rapture and the apocalypse. And then nothing happened. And everyone who believed him and who sold their houses and who quit their jobs was then just homeless and unemployed.
Yep.
Like, that's real harm that comes out of people looking at Revelation and being like, aha, now I can try to figure out what's going to happen in the near future or whatever.
And this is one of those
directly
things
harmful.
about the theological, like, applications of Revelation, is that I understand why Christianity as a system kind of had to wrestle with it, because obviously the predictions in it did not come true when they were supposed to. And it was really meant as an exhortation, like, hey, things are really tough right now, just hang in there. Which is great. That's a great message. But the longer you go on and the things in Matthew don't happen, Christianity kind of had to go, okay, so maybe this is just a prophecy about, like, the future. Which, okay, that's fine.
Could have avoided that problem with Revelation had they just not included it in the canon.
Yeah, the problem is that when you keep telling people that, no, it's coming in, like, 5 minutes, then you start getting all sorts of crazy wackadoodle ideas out of that. And
yeah.
It really, it breaks brains.
Look, there's also a reason why Revelation is not actually read in any Catholic or Orthodox church.
Yeah.
Ever. It just isn't part of the readings.
Millerites. Yike.
So yeah, it's because those two churches realize, like, oh, this is a bunch of craziness that people will go crazy with if we let them just keep ruminating on it. So let's just... It's in the Bible. If you buy a Bible that's like a Catholic or an Orthodox Bible, it'll be there. But if you go through, like, what are the readings for Sunday services, it just doesn't come up. Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith for $5 says, weren't the last verse or two added to Revelation after the main body was written with a Ghidorah, a tunicate, and a Ghidorah? So we'll take a drink for Ghidorah. I actually don't know the answer to that question. Because the last verse or two of Revelation are basically like,
Behold, I am coming soon.
Something like that. And then there's also
something like that?
There's the exhortation to not add or subtract anything from this text. Yeah. I don't know if that was written afterwards. I don't know how you would determine that with such a small bit of text. But, like, that's certainly a plausibility. Like, maybe. It doesn't seem inherently impossible or anything. Star Song for $5 says, William Miller and the Millerite movement, along with the rise of Jehovah's Witnesses and the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And yeah, and that's the thing.
And dispensationalism.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of, I'll just say, harmful theology that has come out of Revelation. And ultimately, I'm not here to tell you what the right theology is, but I can and will recognize and call out harmful theology. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If your theology is going to directly cause harm to people who otherwise would not be harmed, I feel perfectly justified in calling that out and pointing it out.
That also, it kind of assumes that you know what harm is and that you can acknowledge it and see it in your own, like, text and theology. So that's kind of a hard...
It can be hard
thing to scale.
It is, but it doesn't make... It's not an excuse for you to not take into account whether or not the ideas you're promulgating are causing harm to people. And if they are, maybe you shouldn't do that. Like, hey, you know what? If you think the apocalypse is coming up, good for you, man. Maybe don't get other people to ruin their lives. And if you think that the only way to get them through the apocalypse is to convert them to Christianity, okay, great. Tell them what you think Christianity is about, and they can decide to join or not. Right?
I just want to be left alone. Sincerely, the Jews.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, is if they tell you not interested, then walk away. Go find someone else. Someone else is interested.
Do that whole dust your feet thing. That'd be nice.
But that would be nice. Yeah. Because the thing is, like, look, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to come up to someone and say, here's what my religion is. Are you interested? And if they say no, then you walk away. And if they say yes, then okay, great. Go have a talk about that, right? Like, if someone wants to convert to your religion after hearing about it, good for them and good for you. But if they don't, it's time to walk away. Goop23 for $5 says, Mark of the Beast theories have also caused a lot of trouble. Oh boy, have they.
Yeah, oh my goodness, they still are.
Yeah, like...
Every new thing is scary and Mark of the Beast.
Remember when implanting microchips into your pets for, like, tracking purposes was going to be the Mark of the Beast?
Remember when Kent Hovind said that the UPC codes on your products are, Mark of the Beast?
The Mark of the
Credit
Beast.
cards,
the Mark of the Beast. Yep.
Yeah, it's just whatever new thing.
Basically, anything that's designed to make economic transactions more easy is now going to be the Mark of the Beast.
Regardless of whether or not it's on or in your head, your forehead, and your hand.
Yeah, because no one's printing UPC codes on your arm or your head. Like, what would that even mean?
Yeah.
What would that do?
It's just ridiculous. Like, they want to be super paranoid about it, and then you go, yeah, but nobody's got this in their forehead or on their hand. Well, you know that.
I will remember I do remember how, like, blown my mind was when I realized, or was informed, that barcodes don't encode the price. Because look, you scan the barcode and the price comes up.
Amazing.
And it never occurred to me that, no, this is actually just the code for the product that works across any store. Yeah. And the store itself has a database. The store
sets the prices.
Right, the store has a database that associates that product with their particular price, but that's not encoded in the barcode. I was like, whoa, that makes sense, but I never thought about it. Yeah, that's why you can go to 2 different stores, buy the exact same product, they'll have the exact same barcode, but get different prices.
Yep.
Yeah, that just never occurred to me. And when I found out, mind blown. But hey, we're just past the hour mark. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to get myself a little bit more margarita here, and we will be back in just a little bit. But in the meantime, you guys can listen to the musical stylings of one Beethoven. So, yeah, enjoy that, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. And we are back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us, those of you who did. I just want to say, before we get right back into it, just my normal, quick, after the break kind of talk, which is to say, hey, this channel is almost entirely dependent on the generosity of my viewers, whether it be through joining the channel, joining the Patreon, super chatting, gifting memberships, any of that stuff. It's really helpful. And if you are enjoying the show, my channel in general, and you are interested in supporting financially, I have a few different ways to help you do that. One, of course, is the Patreon. That starts at $1.99, or no, sorry, it starts at $1 a month. You can get a 15% discount if you go annual. It gives you access to my Discord server. It gives you access, early access to my videos. That is a great way to support me. It's also where I get to keep the most. There's also the channel memberships. That starts at $1.99 a month. It can go up from there. And it gives you this same early access and the same Discord server access. There's also, if you go over to my second channel, Top Hats Off, we have memberships over there. That starts at 99 cents. And it gives you access to that Discord server, but it does not give you access to early access to videos here. However, it does give you access to member-only videos over there, of which there are currently 2, both of which are just copies of live stream Let's Play Star Trek Adventures, but with a black screen, because I know some people like to watch that as they fall asleep, and the black screen helps with that. So that is why I am going to be getting all of those videos into a black screen format just for members. So if a monthly or annual thing isn't your deal, there's a merch store link in the description. There is a wish list. There's also a wish list for Bent Hoven in the description, as well as Vishanti, and there's also a Patreon for Vishanti and Bent. So if you want to help either of those two out, that is also very helpful to me, because I like it when, the people I care about are also doing okay. That's a peace of mind for me. And also, if none of that is like your thing, you just can't afford it, or you're just not interested in helping out financially, please just like this video, share it around, introduce people who you think might like the channel to the channel. So with that, I have some more margarita that I have poured. And I do want to say, here's one thing I will say about Revelation that is nice. We wouldn't have Trench Crusade art without Revelation.
That's right.
And I do appreciate Trench Crusade's art, so... And the lore.
So good.
I appreciate the lore and the art. Yeah, so... Yeah, so at the very least, we can say that Revelation has inspired some top-notch art out there. So, alright, here we go.
And you'll see that neither one of them is scientifically accurate. So he might say, oh, I did do what you said. I did look at the whole document. See, the beginning and the end. Now, I don't think that's actually a fair assessment of what she actually has done. But let's take a look at something like apocalyptic literature, like Revelation, and say, what do we have there? Is that a scientific error where we have stars falling to the earth?
Sure.
I mean, it very obviously is, because stars can't fall to earth. Right? At least as we use the word now. And what the author is envisioning is a third of the stars in the sky, which means you can't just say, well, he really just means like shooting stars and like meteorites. No, because a third of the stars in the sky can't fall if all you're having is meteorites. None of the stars that are permanently in the sky would fall in that case. There would be no change to the stars in the sky.
From the heavens, which of course is impossible because they're far bigger than the earth and they would obliterate the earth if they came close. So go ahead and respond to that.
Hey, that's true. We'll take a drink for it.
If you look at the whole document, if you look at Revelation chapter 1, it tells us that the stars are angels. So the word aster...
Which they're not, though, Ross. First of all, I'm pretty sure it doesn't say that, but I don't know. Whatever. I don't really care.
Yeah, I'm gonna fact check that while you're talking.
But here's the thing. Stars aren't angels. They're big fusing balls of hydrogen and helium and a few other elements. That's not what they are. And if you want to say a third of the angels fell to Earth, and you're doing this the whole like fall of Satan thing, okay, great, but that's not a scientific conclusion, and it does not explain the idea of a third of the stars in the heaven falling. Because when you say the stars in the heaven, you mean the things that you look up and see at night. The tiny little dots in the sky that you see at night. Those are the stars in the heaven. Or the heavens.
Yeah, chapter 1 doesn't say anything about stars being angels.
Let's take a drink for that one. We're gonna call that a Trojan source.
Hmm.
Womp womp.
in Greek could either refer literally to the stars in the sky, or it could be defined as it is in Revelation chapter 1.
Which it's not.
That this is a symbol for angels. So
which is just not there. So, Hugh, here's the thing. Look, dude, I don't really care if you want to interpret this as angels in an effort to make this more meaningful to you. But remember, the idea here is that we are starting with nothing but the Bible, and we're trying to derive scientific principles from it. No one is going to derive the idea that stars are angels, and therefore this is a metaphor for not real stars falling from the real heavens. No one is going to come to that conclusion.
Okay, I found what he's talking about. So John sees a vision of a person holding stars in their hand, and those 7 stars are equated to golden lampstands.
Okay.
And they're angels or messengers of the 7 churches, and the lampstands are the churches. So it's specifically talking about the messengers to the churches of Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea.
Which are represented by stars in the sky. Yeah. So here's one of the things about... Now, look, Kit might disagree with me about this, right? But here's my take on figurative language in apocalyptic literature, right? To me, the example of, like, what a first century Second Temple Jew is going to consider to be apocalyptic literature is going to be Daniel, right? And the apocalyptic bits of Daniel start out with Daniel interpreting dreams. And in Daniel, it's very clear when he says, this represents this, that the visions are not supposed to be literal. Instead, they figure literal events, but they do so in some kind of metaphorical thing, like the statue, right? No, it's explicit in the text. The statue represents various empires that are in the past and to come, according to the time frame in which Daniel is set. So, when I hear things about, like, and the figure was holding 7 stars that represented the 7 lampstands that themselves were representations of the church, yeah, that's a whole lot of layers of symbolic stuff going on. And what that doesn't mean is that, therefore, later on in the text, when it says that a different set of stars that are explicitly in the heavens, unlike the previous stars, are going to fall to earth, you don't get to use the previous stars, which represented churches, which themselves had angels assigned to them, and then pretend that the stars that fall
were churches.
Yeah.
The stars were the messengers to the churches, but yes.
You don't get to then say that other stars referenced elsewhere are also angels. That is eisegesis. That is you saying, well, this part of the text can't literally be true, so I'm going to pretend that a different part of the text is actually governing this part of the text, even though there's no good textual reason to say so. Mark Argamoto 1313 Smith for $5 says, you have your margarita, but did you find your lost shaker of salt? Wait, did I have a lost shaker of salt? Is that a thing? I'm not currently missing...
a Jimmy Buffett song.
Oh, oops. That was a little bit of an error there. That's a Dapper as a professional moment if I ever saw one. There we go. Nope, that's still wrong. Jeez, I am falling apart here. So there we go. Take a Dapper as a professional drink. And then a drink for the Godzilla, or sorry, the Ghidorah that's in there, because it says Ghidorah pelagic tunic, gross. And then another Ghidorah. One of these days, Vishanti, we have to watch GMK, where Ghidorah's a good guy.
Okay.
And Godzilla is literally the manifestation of the spirit of all of the dead caused by the Japanese in World War II come to seek revenge against the Japanese. Which is like...
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Super metal. It's like, jeez, wow. And it's not just like all the people that like they killed and tortured. It's also like all the people who died on the Japanese side of the war fighting a silly war in which the Japanese committed a bunch of war crimes. They're also pissed off about it. So they're also part of Godzilla. Jester for $5 says, would a third of the stars count as getting nuked? Or are AIG just a black hole full of Oumuamua? I mean, so that's the thing. I don't actually know how the original audience is supposed to conceptualize the stars falling to Earth. Like, I don't know what... Let's say I'm a 2nd century guy. What would I think would happen if the stars fell to Earth? I don't actually know.
Also, I mean, you have in chapter 8, a third of the sun, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars are darkened. Like, their light is darkened. So what's going on here? Is it like maybe a giant mothership is blocking out some of the sky? Like,
it's the return of Nibiru.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that's what it is. The Anunnaki are coming back, and John of Patmos was warning us way back in the 2nd or 3rd century or whatever. My Unfinished Journey has gifted another Dapper Dinosaur membership. Thank you very much. I will take a drink for that. All right, here we go.
In other words, these stars falling from the sky might be a reference to demons or angels falling down from heaven to the earth. The other thing is he needs to recognize, look, this isn't written in English, it's written in Greek. The Greek word aster, translated as star, can mean star, it can mean planet, it can mean asteroid, it can mean comet, it can mean...
Yeah, it means bright thing in the sky. But when you say a third of the stars in the sky, you mean that before this event, the stars are in the sky, and then after the event, the sky only has 2/3 of the stars originally. You're not going to be able to account for that with asteroids and planets. It's going to require the actual stars as we conceptualize them to be falling to Earth in order for this to make sense.
And the only reason it made sense to them is because they pictured a celestial dome with these things like embedded in it. So,
yeah,
come on.
meteorite. And
well, okay, to be fair, at the time of the writing of Revelation, the stars were conceptualized as inhabiting a spherical shell that's concentric to Earth.
Spherical shell.
So,
yeah,
because we got to remember that by the time of the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, basically everyone knew that the Earth was a globe, and the New Testament authors are almost certainly not flat earthers.
We've all been outside where we've watched meteor showers, where these stars fall towards the Earth and burn up in the atmosphere.
Hey, Hugh!
Yeah, but when you have a meteor shower, the rest of the stars don't go anywhere,
right,
man.
we can't say what proportion of the stars fall to Earth during a meteor shower, because the stars stay the same before and after. I'm just taking a drink. That was too dumb. Look, here's the thing. I don't actually have a lot of problems with Hugh Ross, right? He's an old Earth creationist, which means he's way, way closer to being right about the universe than most creationists. And I normally wouldn't really cover much of what he's done. I have a cordial relationship with his employee, Fuzzrana. We had a conversation not that long ago on Jackson Wheat's channel that I thought went, pretty well. No one got angry. I didn't, unlike most of the times when I talk to creationists on Jackson's channel, I didn't have to go pour a tall glass of hard liquor. That's how I measure how the talks are going, is how soon is it before I just go grabbing an actual glass of whiskey, toss like an ice cube in there, and then just start drinking. And it didn't happen at all. Which means it was an excellent conversation from my end. So, I don't want to make it seem like I have a whole lot of stuff against Hugh Ross, but here's the thing, man. You are straining this text into unbelievable degrees in order to save apocalyptic visions as, literally plausible, when that was never the point of the apocalyptic visions in the first place. Why are you doing this? You don't have to. You could just leave it as this is an apocalyptic vision. Just like the apocalyptic visions in Daniel are explicitly not literal in the text, we can say that because this is in the same genre, maybe that's a similar idea as to what's happening now, especially since in other instances in Revelation, you're told explicitly that part of the vision actually represents some other physical thing that isn't literally what's in the vision, like the lampstands. Right? Because
and this thing about the woman and the dragon, and she's giving birth, and it has 7 heads and 10 horns, and it's got 7 crowns. It's
a bunch of numerology.
When it talks about the dragon sweeping stars from the sky, this is a vision. There's not an actual physical woman giving birth, and an actual physical dragon with multiple heads and crowns and horns.
You know how you can tell?
It's a vision!
The name of the book is literally Revelation. That's what that word means. Something revealed to you by God in a vision. Or by anything else, I suppose. Once again, this is reminding me of how much I wish that history had gone just a little bit differently, and that the Eastern patriarchates had overpowered Rome, because Rome was really the one pushing, hey, let's include Revelation, and that Antioch and Jerusalem and Constantinople and Alexandria had been no, we're not doing it, and neither should you. Because it was a slow process to get those other patriarchates on board, because the early imperial church was the main patriarchies. They were Antioch, Jerusalem, Constantinople, Alexandria, and Rome. And so Yeah, and if you're keeping track, the one that became the Roman Catholic Church is just Rome. And the one that became the Oriental Orthodox Church is mostly just Alexandria. And then Constantinople, Jerusalem, and Antioch are the core of the historical Eastern Orthodox Church.
Yep.
And so the text he's referring to there in the Revelation could simply be a reference to a meteor shower.
No, it couldn't.
No.
Not based on the text, man.
So we need to look at all the possibilities, and he insisted on...
That's not one of them, though. Like, think about it this way, right? Let's say I said to you, I got rid of a third of the dust in my room. That means I took the dust that's just normally there, right? And I got rid of a third of it, maybe from one section of the room. Okay, you can't come in and say to me, well, what you really mean is you brought in extra dust that was never in the room and then blew it at me so I could see it. No, that's not what happened. A third of the dust is gone. That means there was more dust before, and now there's fewer bits of dust. That's what the text is saying about the stars, man. This really annoys me, because Hugh Ross is someone who says that he gets his ideas from the Bible. But very clearly, he is extremely willing to take ideas that he did not get from the Bible and then change the very plain meaning of some of the Bible texts in order to correspond to that. And which, on its own, I don't actually care about. But then to say that other people who don't do that are wrong, that's the part that really annoys me, right? You can have as many crazy private interpretations of the Bible that I don't think are plausible as you want. I don't really care. But if you're going to say that Neil deGrasse Tyson is wrong for just taking the text at face value and saying you can't get science out of it, now we have a problem. Because that's not fair to Tyson. It's not fair to the text. It's not even fair to you.
Yeah, and it's like he keeps saying, oh, I'm getting these ideas from the Bible. My man, you're getting it from your, received theological tradition.
Well, coupled with his scientific training, which he's trying to harmonize those two.
Coupled with your scientific training. And it's just like, listen, man, no. And yes, obstinate spare, I'm eating Cheetos. I love Cheetos. It's my number one snack food.
Cheetos are pretty great. Mark Agamotto 1313 says, wasn't the book originally the Apocalypse of John? Well, here's the thing, though. Apocalypse and Revelation. Apocalypse is just Greek for revelation, which itself comes from Latin, right? So when people were translating the word apocalypse from Greek to Latin in the Vulgate, it became revelation, which is where we get it in English. So, it's the same word. Apocalypse does not actually originally mean in ancient Greek, the end of the world. The reason we have that association is because apocalyptic literature often dealt with themes that were eschatological. But the word itself in Greek does not actually have anything necessarily to do with the eschaton. So, yeah.
We summoned Kip Davis.
Oh, did we?
With all of our talk about the language in the text. Summoned.
Hey, Kip, we were just talking about the etymology of words like revelation and apocalypse, and how the word apocalypse doesn't necessitate ideas about the eschaton, but it often did in apocalyptic literature. So, hence the connection. So, all right.
Interpreting it only one way.
He comes in at the dumbest possible moment.
I know.
The same mistake he made when he was challenging Genesis chapter 1. He looked at only one interpretation and...
Yeah, the interpretation you would get if all you had was the text, though. Because that's his idea. Remember, right. Neil deGrasse Tyson isn't saying you couldn't possibly harmonize science with the Bible. That's not the point he was making. He was just saying if all you had was the Bible, you could not derive modern scientific ideas from it. And he's right about that. And here's the thing. So, I'm not a huge Neil deGrasse Tyson fan, right? I have a lot of problems with the guy here and there. I don't hate him or anything,
he's
but
a wet blanket.
Yeah, he is a wet blanket. I do think that sometimes he dumbs things down to the point where people get the wrong impression about ideas. So I do think that sometimes he can oversimplify. He also has a tendency to just say anecdotes that there's no evidence of ever actually having happened. And which is a little weird. At one point he was like, oh yeah, I heard this senator saying, I've done a 360 on that issue, and now I'm on the other side. And
360, that's not how that works.
But the thing is, that was his point. But the thing is, no one could actually identify any time that any senator had ever said that he could have possibly heard. And so it was just a story he made up. It's well, then why do you need to contextualize it as a thing you actually heard from a real politician in the United States? You're just making it up.
Okay.
Anyway.
So, DM, DM Wing Magnets Can't Evolve says in the chat, Apocalypse is Greek, wasn't it derived from a Jewish town? You're thinking of Megiddo and Armageddon. Har Megiddo is referring to the mountain and valley of Megiddo, and that's where we get Armageddon from.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, Armageddon, Apocalypse, Revelation, these are all different words. Some of them are from different languages, and they have a complex interplay, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
Failed to acknowledge that Christians have had multiple interpretations of that text throughout all the centuries of the church.
Yeah.
And therefore, we need to actually, as you point out, pull in the other information.
But again, Hugh, the question isn't how have Christians historically made sense of these texts? The question is, could you start from the texts and derive anything like a modern scientific view of the universe? And at no point have you ever given any indication that the answer could possibly be yes. All you said is, I am able to harmonize my current scientific understanding with my understanding of the range of possible interpretations of the text. But that's a different question.
I mentioned Job. Psalm 104 also parallels Genesis 1, as does Proverbs 8. So I always tell people, before you interpret Genesis 1, at a minimum, look at the 3 parallel texts.
No, you don't need to do that, because those weren't written by the same person. Yeah. Those were different texts written by different people for different purposes. And yeah, there is commonality in them because the theme of creation is sometimes a thing different authors want to bring up for their own purposes. So yeah, we're just going to drink for like, well, you can't interpret Genesis unless, first of all, you also read all the Psalms and Job and whatever. No.
No. Mm-mm.
If you want to make the argument that that's the case, you need to do more than just say, but they're both in my book that says the Bible on it. Because one of the things is, remember, the Bible isn't a text. It is a collection of texts that are traditionally associated with each other by various religious traditions. And exactly which texts are in it varies. And
it is an anthology.
Mm-hmm. And it's not even an anthology by a single author, right?
Yeah.
And even if it were an anthology by one author, like I have like the complete works of like Lovecraft on my bookshelf. Those stories contradict each other. And you know what? That's okay.
So do Sherlock Holmes stories, and they were written by the same guy.
Yeah, it's fine. Even in the case of like Sherlock Holmes or like Lovecraft, where there's supposed to be some kind of like vague idea of continuity, there still isn't, and that's okay. It's fine. You're allowed to acknowledge contradictions in the Bible. In fact, the reason that one of the most popular like sort of like Bible fanfic literature like genres in Christianity for a long time was the gospel harmony. That's specifically because the gospels don't actually completely corroborate each other. They're mutually contradictory. And so people wrote harmonies. And each harmony was different in how it attempted to harmonize the stories between the 4 gospels. If Christians had historically not thought of the gospels as in some ways contradictory, then they wouldn't have bothered with gospel harmonies. Because it would have just been like, well, just read the gospels. It's right there. Who cares? Why would I need to harmonize anything?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things, is like this idea that the Bible is completely free of contradictions is actually a relatively recent development, which was a attempt at a correction or a counteraction against things like critical scholarship. The idea like inerrancy is not a long-standing historical thing. Sorry, go ahead.
You don't have to look super deep into the Gospels to find the contradictions, because there's 2 completely different ancestry lines given for Jesus, and
they can't both be true.
Harmony is like, oh well, once for Mary, that was not done. You don't give the lineage of women. That's not how that works. Just no. Not
normally. Certainly not in that culture. There are matrilineal cultures where that would be more typical, but first century Judea was not one of those matrilineal cultures. And notice that there's a difference between matrilineal and matriarchal. They're not the same thing. You can have a matrilineal patriarchal culture that is perfectly consistent. It's just that your ancestry is primarily traced through the mother's line, which, before the advent of paternity testing, to me makes a whole lot more sense, right? You can be much more confident about who your mother is than who your father is in the absence of paternity testing. So I feel like until modern DNA techniques, why would anyone want to do patrilineal ancestry? I think matrilineal would make more sense, but hey, I'm not in charge of any of that. Roshan on Math has made up numbers, Keller, for $4.99 says, the Bible is like the VHS series. Different writers and directors with different goals. Yes, actually, that's not a bad one.
Such a great series.
I do like the VHS. Yeah. And they're basically annual now, which is nice, because
I love that. I love that.
Every year. And look, sure, they're uneven, but that's part of the thing. It's different stories by different authors for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Also, hey...
VHS Viral is almost universally just...
Yeah. Also, maybe don't get onto an alien spacecraft when it goes to, like, super crazy light speed and you're not in some kind of, like, G-force container, because maybe you'll get smushed into paste. And then
what's unfortunate
rebuilt wrong.
Bone Storm, which is the Moorhead and Benson contribution to VHS, it's in VHS Viral, and I'm just like, man, that sucks, because...
It was good, too. That's the best part of VHS Viral. Here's what we're going to do.
Possibly the only good part.
Well... What we gotta do is we gotta make
Even then, I don't really
cut.
like that short very much because it takes too long to get to the freaking point.
Yeah. I still say, though, we need to do a supercut of, like, the best short from each VHS. Just have those.
About it.
All right. Josh McGee's for $5 says, Gospel Harmony, a great name for a Christian barbershop quartet. Yeah, actually, that is...
Mm-hmm.
That's, I would listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
Look, Christianity has a lot of really good music. Modern Christian, like, rock and stuff, which is just copying some other style, is not my favorite example of that.
Contemporary Christian is the blandest.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
You know what's worse, though, is contemporary Catholic stuff specifically. It's worse than the Protestant stuff. I don't know why.
There's no way it's worse. There's no way it's worse.
Have you ever heard He Will Lift You Up on Eagle Wings? Or Eagle's Wings?
No.
Listen to it. It is my favorite example of how terrible contemporary Catholic music can be.
I was a church musician for, like, not quite 15 years, and we played lots of traditional hymn-based stuff. We played contemporary Christian stuff, and it was just so bland. I hated it. Oh my god.
I am happy that for the short period I was in a church choir, I don't think we sang anything that had been composed more recently than about 500 years ago.
Well, the thing is, we had the rhythm section, because most of us were either classically trained or came up in, like, Pentecostal churches where you have to be a really just insanely good musician. We had this game going where we would try to figure out which, like, 80s pop song that particular contemporary Christian artist had ripped off, because that's about where they had gotten to in terms of, like, what they felt comfortable ripping off.
Check the chord progression.
We were like, oh my god. Yeah, we did. We were checking the chord progression and be like, oh my god, this is just a Police song in a different key, and it just... So ridiculous. Like, at one point, I think we had figured out one of them was like a song by Warrant or something. It was like an 80s hair metal band, and we were just like, yeah, this is literally just the same chord progression.
Mm-hmm.
Literally. Yeah.
Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith for $2 says, Gregorian chants for the win. Yeah, I actually agree. Gregorian chant is freaking awesome. And I don't care what anyone has to say about that. Gregorian chant is excellent. And it is something that I will still listen to.
People were setting chant to, like, electronic music.
Yeah, I liked that,
was a whole
actually.
thing for a couple years. Yeah.
Yep. All right, here we go.
Also address the scientific content that's there. And so look at all four texts and then draw the appropriate conclusion.
Yeah, and that's such a critical thing for us to understand, because we do this all the time. Look, we to say that we have reinterpreted things so that we can make it fit because we're sort of embarrassed by the language. Actually, it doesn't even comport with the contemporaneous way in which we talk in common parlance. I mean,
but it is literally what you're doing just now. So I don't care if it comports with the way that you talk about the text in modern parlance. It's literally what you're doing. And here's how I can tell, right? If the Bible were actually giving people insight into real science, then people would have been able to use the Bible to determine things about science. And yet...
And much sooner than it happened.
Yeah, and yet that doesn't seem to have ever actually happened. Now, that's not to say that the Bible has never inspired scientists to do science. But they did not then confirm their hypothesis that they got from the Bible in the first place. It's a bit more, there's a few more steps in there, right? Like, you get people who will say things like, well, from the Bible, I see God as, you know, a God who lets the universe operate according to consistent principles. Like, okay, if that's what you take in the Bible, sure, whatever. Fine. I don't think that's the only way you can take the Bible, but whatever. And then because that's how I take, well, that's part of my theology, I now feel confident that I can go out and discover principles in the universe. Okay, great. I'm willing to count that as the Bible inspiring science. But that's not getting science from the Bible. That would be like saying, oh, hey, look, here in Genesis, it says that someone was clever for having his cattle mate near stripy sticks, and that produced stripy cattle. Therefore, I should be able to test that.
Sheep.
Sheep? Oh, yeah, well, sheep.
Mhm.
Or sheep and goats, I suppose. Yeah. They're livestock. How about that? Livestock.
Flocks.
Yeah, they're flocks. Cattle come in herds, I suppose, not flocks, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the actual difference, though, between a flock of sheep and a herd of cattle, other than just that one is cattle and one is sheep? Like, is there a different organizational pattern or something?
Have to ask a shepherd or a cattle herder, I guess.
Any cowboys in chat? If you're a cowboy in chat, let me know.
We refer to falling stars now. In the 21st century, we refer to falling stars. And we clearly don't mean stars that are falling from the sky. What we mean is meteorites, or we mean meteor showers.
Yeah, but the thing is, though...
Just because we called them shooting stars doesn't make them stars.
Right, and it still leaves us with the problem of that is not something you could describe as a third of the stars falling from heaven. Because the stars means that these are known stars. That's why the definite article is there. Like, does he not know what the definite article is for? The definite article means that you know what the referent is from previous context, or because it's the only thing of its kind, right? So when I say the stars, what that means is that I am referring to a known set of stars. And if you're in the 1st or 2nd century or the 3rd century in, like the Near East, the stars are the ones you can see in the sky and be able to point to and identify. Those are the stars. If I say that a third of the stars fall from heaven, and I have not previously in the text given you a collection of stars that are not just the regular stars you see, the only reasonable interpretation is that I am talking about the stars that you see in the night sky on a regular basis. Those are the stars. And, I'm sorry that Revelation was written in Greek, a language that makes a distinction between definite and indefinite nouns, but we're stuck with that fact, and you don't get to ignore it. The Greek article exists. In fact, it's a big part of learning Greek.
Welcome nuance.
I know. Who cares about definiteness? It's just some kind of, grammatical category. Not important or anything. It doesn't actually carry any semantic meaning.
It's just a specific way we communicate very particular ideas, but whatever.
Mm-hmm. And look, there are lots of languages that don't have definite articles. In fact, I'm pretty sure most languages don't have definite articles. And if the Bible had been written in one of those, then I might be more inclined to accepting this idea. But it wasn't written in one of those.
Speaking of cowboys in the chat, when I was on the train down to SBL, somewhere in, I think, Irvine, this group of guys gets on the train, and they're all wearing, jeans and a shirt blazer, and their cattle herder hats, cattleman's hats. And at least 2 of them had spurs on their boots to ride the train.
Hey, you never know when you're going to need to get that. You never know when you're going to need to, dig your heels into the train to make it go faster. It could happen.
It sure was a thing.
Comment, if you could, on the way in which sometimes biblical writers will actually speak phenomenologically. In other words, they have an audience they're speaking to that actually, and writing to, that might not have an in-depth level of the scientific data that would be available about the universe. And so they have to speak phenomenologically. They can't.
The idea that that's how they're writing implies the idea that the writers also actually had the advanced knowledge. But that's the thing you're trying to demonstrate. This idea that we can interpret the Bible as just being phenomenological language based on an actual in-depth knowledge of the physics requires you to assume that that in-depth knowledge of the physics is there. But that's the thing that you're trying to demonstrate. This is now becoming a begging the question fallacy. You're assuming that you're right in order to demonstrate that you're right. That's not how this works.
Just say, oh, by the way, there are these things that are out there, and this is how they operate, and you need to understand that, as opposed to getting a point across. And so they're literally describing what they see, whether it's John in Revelation or...
they're literally just trying to get the point across for a vision by using things you're familiar with already.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god. They're not trying to scientifically describe the motion of the spheres.
Yeah, firstly, I don't think they are either. It's just that does not mean that then you can say that they had modern scientific knowledge, because they weren't trying to describe that.
Throughout the Bible, they're describing something that they see. So there's a response that says, the biblical writers are speaking phenomenologically. They're saying, I see this thing. I only have so much language with which to describe this. I can't describe it in scientific language. We don't have words like quasars and gravitational pull and subatomic.
Well, fun, because the Bible doesn't ever talk about quasars.
You can't see quasars with your naked eye anyway, so why would that matter?
You know what? Whatever. Although I did find it funny that time in the original Star Trek when they came across a quasar in the middle of the Milky Way, and was like, they did not know what quasars were when the show was made.
Obviously not.
They didn't. Yeah, the Enterprise apparently had standing orders to investigate any quasars it came across. It's like, well, that's not how quasars work, but okay.
Nope.
Yeah, it's always fun to watch like how science progresses and in the background of Star Trek, because like you go back to the older Star Treks and they're saying things where you're just like, that's not how things work. But then you realize, yeah, but back when this show was written, people thought that's how it worked.
We're already on the threshold of petabytes not really being that much.
Yeah, I need to put a
data storage wow threshold. So
I'm gonna put like a 3 petabyte hard drive on my wish list or something. If anyone wants to get me a 3 petabyte hard drive, let me know.
We don't have these kind of language available to us in those days, so to describe it in the best way they can. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Well, it always amuses me.
He might even have some legs with that if the author didn't already describe to us what he meant by angels in chapter 1.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this is still just real dumb.
The scientists will critique the Bible as being scientific nonsense because it talks about the 4 corners of the earth or the 4 quarters of the earth and say it's a flat earth book. And look, it's...
Well, first, it is a flat earth book, but second, the quarters part isn't the reason for that. That's just talking about the cardinal directions. I don't think that necessarily necessitates that means that the earth is flat. However, things like,
assumes a flat earth.
Assumes a flat earth, but things the dome, or talk about the earth being supported on pillars and things like that, those are good reasons to say that the earth is flat, according to the Bible. Or when it's talking about how God sits on his throne above the circle of the earth and uses the earth as his footstool.
It's just a word for sphere. No, it's not.
It's not. Mm-mm.
That's not how that works.
As the sun rises and sets, we know that's not the way it is. And so, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, but you can impart, and you cannot, impute that knowledge onto the biblical authors unless you have a good reason to. Right? You have to give some evidence that the biblical authors did in fact know that the sun doesn't rise and set, and in fact it's the earth that spins around. Because I don't think any of them knew that. I don't think the authors of the text that we now call the New Testament knew that. I'm very confident that no one who was writing anything that was in the Tanakh or the Deuterocanon knew that. None of them knew that. And if you want to say that they did, and they were just speaking phenomenologically, you have to demonstrate that they knew that.
Angeloid is saying MC Toon keeps insisting that the Bible doesn't say the earth is flat. The Bible doesn't say in any passage the earth is flat. It assumes a flat earth. That's completely different. They're writing based on what they knew, which at the time, they hadn't gone all the way around the world. So to them, locally, it seemed flat. So that's how they wrote.
Yeah,
They're not going to find a verse that says the earth is flat. It just, there's the dome, there's the circle of the earth. That's not, a metaphor. They literally just mean it was a circle, so...
Yeah, MC Toon is... Yeah. This is an area where he and I disagree a little bit. And also, he is at odds with, the overwhelming consensus in, the scholarship around the topic.
Yeah.
But also, his point is usually that the flat earther in question is basing this claim off of their pet interpretation of their pet translation of their favorite book, and that he can go and just get other translations that say other things, and since neither of them have any knowledge of the original languages, we should probably just move on from that topic. And as a rhetorical strategy, I understand why he does that. I do suspect he also thinks that the Bible does not assume a flat earth, and I think he's wrong about that.
Yeah, the last time this kind of came up, I think that was his underlying philosophy is no, it actually doesn't assume a flat earth, da-da-da-da-da. And I think the idea makes him uncomfortable theologically, but that's, hey, that's his business. I'm not going to try to tell someone out of their theology.
And hey, look, I don't have an overall problem with MC2, right? We're different people. We're going to have different positions on different things.
One of the 2 or 3 strongest voices in scientifically combating flat earthers, so...
Yeah, and which is a valuable thing. And like the fact that I have a minor quibble with exactly how he does it on just the one topic of like biblical interpretation, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. And he's going to Antarctica, I think.
Yeah, he is in a couple of weeks now, or maybe it's even less. It might be 13 days now. Which
I cannot wait to see the results of all this.
I really want the aftermath. I want to know what happens. I want to see which flat earthers, which kinds of cope which flat earthers come up with. So in case you guys,
man, they've already come up with so much cope,
I know.
It hasn't even happened yet.
In case anyone was wondering what we're talking about, there's this thing called the final experiment that's coming up in a couple weeks, where a bunch of both flat earthers as well as some anti-flat earth science communicators are going to be going down to a glacier in Antarctica to be there for a period of time when the sun shouldn't set for the entire 4 days they're there, according to the globe. Of course, according to most flat earth ideas, the sun will have to go away and at least be invisible and not shedding light on the where they are, and also should always be north of them. Whereas the globe predicts that for about half the day, the sun will actually be in the southern sky, not the northern parts of the sky.
So, Poetic word, which is someone I haven't thought about in a very long time.
Gigantor?
Apparently, his brand of cope is that, no, it's just the center, actually. And I'm like, so you just arbitrarily flip where the North and the South Pole is because it's inconvenient? That's not how that works.
I mean, I don't know why Southern Hemisphere flat earthers don't just say that Antarctica is the center. It would make more sense for where they live. There we go.
You're 21st century scientists, but don't you use the same language? Don't you also talk about the rising and setting of the sun? And when you're talking about the extreme parts of the earth, don't you use that phrase, the four corners of the earth?
I mean, I don't use four corners, but I do use sunrise and sunset, so...
You're using the same phenomenological language that the Bible uses, and so it's a double standard.
Is it suddenly Fiddler on the Roof?
It's always Fiddler on the Roof.
I mean, look, it's good stuff.
Tradition.
Yeah.
You're trying to reject the Bible as a flat earth book when you yourself are using the exact same language.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. There's a lot of other language in the Bible that I don't use that indicates that it's flat. We also know from other cultures nearby that it was pretty much the ubiquitous idea in the culture at the time. And nothing in the Bible unambiguously indicates a spherical earth, at least in the Hebrew scriptures. And a lot of it is very hard to understand as just phenomenological interpretations of a globe earth. Like, when God sits above the circle of the earth, it doesn't mean anything in a globe model. It's a completely meaningless phrase if what you're trying to talk about is the globe. Well, which part of the globe is above? What's the top of the globe? Just think about that. In order to interpret that in a way that makes the Earth a globe, you have to assume that there's an up to the globe, which is a thing who does?
There's no up in space.
Yeah. Who's the group in modern society who thinks that there's a top to the globe? It's the flat earthers.
The flurfs.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're adopting flurf arguments in order to try to argue that the flurfs are wrong, that the Bible is a flat earth book. Not perhaps the best tactic. Yeah. In fact, I'll drink for that. That is an amazingly dumb way to go about this. I actually do kind of wish that video of Kent Hovind trying to debunk the flat earth were still available. It hadn't been nuked by YouTube. Because it was so pathetic. All he had were insults, which were fair insults, right? Because he's like, come on, you moron, talking about flirts. And it's like, yeah, okay, they are morons. But, like, do you have an argument?
I love that all of the arguments and the evidence and the procedures that he uses to debunk flat earth are precisely the same methods that you use to prove that evolution is a thing, and he just goes, nuh-uh.
Cognitive Trifurcation says, obviously Jerusalem is at the top. Actually, there's a long-standing tradition in map making from like the medieval period that Jerusalem is the center of the world. Not necessarily the top, but the center. And Europe and Asia and Africa were drawn as like almost like clover leaves coming out of the center from Jerusalem. And obviously, you know, these were maps that were made before people actually knew the full shapes of Asia and Africa, and to some degree even Europe. But yeah, that was a common convention, was to place Jerusalem at the direct center. Because, of course, it's the center of where God dwells and everything. So, gotta be the center of the earth.
We actually have an example of that Dr. Tyson does. He's trying to in the show Cosmos, which is basically a reboot of the original Carl Sagan show Cosmos, which is a series, a television series that's like a documentary form that talks about the creation of the universe, how the universe works, and all the science behind that. He actually, as a foil for the show, he travels around the universe in the ship of the imagination, the Starship of the Imagination. And Hank Campbell, in an article, actually says, "Hey, wait a minute, Dr. Tyson, the ship you travel around in makes noise. It actually flies around as it."
Yeah, it's because it's imaginary. It's imaginary, so you can imagine noise. What?
Wow.
Hey, you know that part of the show that's explicitly not literal, and they tell you that by calling it imagination? That part is unrealistic. Yep, it sure is. Yep. I don't even know what to do with that.
Wow.
Sean for $5 says,
Wow.
"Above the Earth is over the USA. Duh, that's why AIG is here with the Godzilla attempt. We'll take a drink for the Godzilla." That reminds me of Team America World Police, where they give all distances as like distance from real America. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
That movie's so good.
So here's my thing. I really like the first act of that movie, and I do think it goes downhill because the first act is really very explicitly about like how, hey, maybe a lot of what the US is doing is actually needlessly destructive and not actually helpful. But then by the end of it, they're just like, no, actually, we need the US to go out and bomb other countries to the ground because otherwise the terrorists will win. And it's like, oh, you kind of dropped the ball there on that one towards the end.
Yeah, I really like when they're poking fun at like American Empire and all of our jingoism and crap. That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when they're just like, oh no, actually, it's justified like that.
Yeah. The bit where like Paris is in ruins and burning, and they're like, we did it! We saved the day! That's the best part of the movie.
Well, I mean,
right
that's
there.
Obviously it's ironic, but yeah, it's...
Anyway, here we go.
Just Saturn or Jupiter or other distant heavenly bodies makes noise in space. And of course, it wouldn't make noise in space. So what you have is...
We all know it's because in space no one can hear you scream.
It's true. Alien taught us that.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite movies, by the way, Alien. I actually like Alien more than Aliens, which I know is unusual, but I'm a big horror movie guy and not as big an action movie guy, and Aliens is much more of an action movie than Alien is. So I recognize that my personal preferences do a lot of the heavy lifting in justifying why I like Alien more than Aliens, and that other people will have different preferences, and that's okay.
Showing people at least scientifically accurate information, or at least what we can determine right now, but you're using a poetic vehicle to get there. Now, I'm not saying that...
I think I want to tell the audience about our hyper nerd moment while watching some analog horror.
Go for it.
Because this audience will also appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So, the other night, Dapper and I were watching this analog horror series called Mahoroi. Whatever.
It's got a few different pronunciations.
It's got a few different pronunciations depending on which AI voice is reading it at the time. But it was purporting to show like VHS quality images taken from like various telescopes and stuff. And I paused it because the refraction pattern on these images was very clearly from the James Webb telescope.
It's a very distinct hexagonal diffraction pattern.
Yeah, diffraction pattern. And I paused it. And it was, actually, if it was from the James Webb Telescope, it wasn't from the 2000s. And both of us were just like, wow, it sucks that we're so
nerdy, we can't enjoy this.
Astronomy, we're so nerdy, we can't even enjoy this freaking fake anthology of stuff, because we're like, that's very clearly not from the year 2000.
Yeah, the Hubble did not take
clearly
this.
From the James Webb Telescope.
It's being presented as like baby Hubble telescope, but Hubble had the cross-shaped diffraction patterns, whereas James Webb Space Telescope definitely has the octagonal. It's got like the starburst with 6 different bursts.
Joshua, in the image they took clearly showed gravitational lensing of galaxies and light patterns, and I was like, yeah, there's no way that this.
Well, to be fair, our first Einstein rings and Einstein crosses did come from Hubble, but yeah,
not in that resolution and not with that diffraction pattern.
Josh McGee's for $5 says, seems like a good place to put the last portion of the Mystery Science Theater 3000 theme song.
Yeah.
In the not too distant future. All right, here we go. We'll get a little bit more in.
TV show. We should really just relax.
Yeah, but it's hard when you notice. It's like when something is like set in like the 1990s and then someone like holds up an iPhone, and you're like, no.
Every time the Bible describes the way the world works, it actually does it poetically. My point is that there are times.
You can't just say it's poetic and then just dismiss the fact the Bible does not know how the world works. For one thing, it's not actually mostly poetry. So there's that, but
times in which we can actually do something that allows the listener or the reader to get to the scientifically accurate information, even if what we're saying is more of a poetic vehicle to get us there, like the four corners of the earth or these kind of things, or even when God hangs the ball of the earth, there's no thing he hangs it from. There's no rod he hangs the earth on. So even though we can get scientifically accurate information from that statement, we see poetic language that conveys that information. What do you think about that?
Well, we can get scientifically accurate information from poetry. Like, no, my man. No.
Yeah. Also, YouTube is currently telling me I need 5 more members, which is weird because I feel like it said that a while ago. We got more members. So I don't know what to tell you about that. I will keep an eye on it, though. So we'll get a little bit more and then we'll start wrapping stuff up.
Well, I like that argument, and what I especially appreciate the Bible is it gives us strong clues when it's using figures of speech or poetic language, or where it intends to be interpreted literally and historically.
I mean, I think that that's probably the case in some areas, but I also think, Ross, that you're willing to read in clues to say that this is figurative. Pretty much anywhere where a literal interpretation would be a problem for you, for your attempts to harmonize. Yeah, right. Like, the flood narrative in Genesis is not given in poetic form. Nothing in that is indicating this is supposed to be some kind of like metaphor or something. It's, it's an ideological idea about how, like, life and civilization got to where it is now. And, like, it's an adaptation of older ideas. But, like, there's nothing in there.
Like, I'm with Josh Bowen on this, that it's a polemic in direct response to, like...
Right.
The Assyrian and the Babylonian plague.
But nothing about that polemic indicates that it's supposed to be figurative, right? Like, that's just not in there. Josh McGee's for $5 says, I meant about the ship of the imagination. Yours is valid. Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, and I quibble with the idea that the Jewish texts are clearly a manual for how to live a good life. Because some of them are just historical narratives and etiologies, and that doesn't really have anything.
Oh, hey, Mothra's back. Drink from Drinking from Mothra. All right, so we're going to start wrapping up. I do not know what the deal is with the fact that it still says that we need 5 memberships. Josh McGee just gifted 5, so maybe that will be what takes us over the value. I will keep checking later on today. And if it does, in fact, say that we have a new super chat, or sorry, emoji, I will, in fact, decide to make that the Darwin with the deal with it glasses. So first, let's get those 5 drinks in, and we're going to start doing our wrap-up stuff. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so no free pizza for Bent, but here's the secret.
Oh.
Bob Knob is in town. I'm pretty sure Bob Knob is going to buy Bent some food. So, because Bob Knob was here just earlier today, and he was here a few days ago. So, and yep, that's the Bob Knob from chat. He is actually a Navy. Oh, there's Godzilla. Bob Knob's a Navy buddy, goes way back. So, that's who that is. Let's take a look. Vishanti, what do you have coming up that you might want people to know about?
Now that my conferences have settled down and coming up on the end of the year, I will have a little bit more free time to do video stuff, which I'm very excited about. Tentatively for Monday, Kip and I will be doing a debrief of the SPL conference. So if you are interested in that, tune into one and or both of our channels, and we'll be nattering on about that kind of nerd stuff.
If it doesn't...
Thank you to all of the people who recently have gotten me things off of my wish list. It is always a pleasure to get something in the mail. It always feels like a gift present or whatever. So I always get really excited. And even though my stack of books is now embarrassingly large... I will not complain, because as one of the ladies at the GPS booth this weekend told me, think of it as a fine wine.
Savor
That's how you think of your books.
Yep.
savor it. Yeah, you just little pieces of it at a time. So there are still books on my wish list, making the problem worse. But a lot of them, the SPL Study Bible is on sale for like 20-something bucks. It's usually 2 to 3 times that expensive. So I highly recommend, if you're going to get one, get it now. And if anyone does feel charitable, you know, you can gift me things, and I do want to express my gratitude because that kind of charity means a lot to me. So thank you.
All right. So one actual quick thing about my wish list is someone seems to have got me a box fan that was on there, but that was a while ago that it appeared on the purchase thing and hasn't arrived. So if that was you, please reach out, because I am worried that maybe it was stolen or something, because it has been a very long time that was in the purchased section and it has not gotten here. So I am worried that perhaps there is a problem. And if you know that there isn't a problem, still reach out, just so that I know that there isn't one. Yeah, and if there is a problem, we can try to figure out what happened with Amazon, and at the very least, I can just re-add it to the wish list, and maybe you can get a refund from Amazon. So yeah, if that's you, please let me know, because someone seems to have done that, and I'm getting a little worried that it hasn't arrived. That being said, Vishanti, please let us know when the debrief happens. I will try to share that link on my community tab. And also, if it doesn't go up on your channel live, put it on your channel after the fact as a mirror.
I will.
Okay.
I will.
So
I'm gonna see if we can arrange our StreamYards to like simulcast it.
You can, or at least you should be able to.
On the free tier, so we have to be careful about
that. Yes, of course.
It'll likely be Monday afternoon Pacific time. So
okay. So let's take a look at what is coming up here. Oh, hey, it now says I need 50 more members. And it doesn't give me the option to add an emoji. I have no idea what's happening with YouTube.
Saying that my wish list isn't in the description. Shame on you.
I will add it to the description. If you are looking for it right now before I add it
in the chat.
Yeah, it's in the chat. Also, if you click through to Vishanti's channel, it is linked right there. So there's that too. Yeah, I don't know why YouTube likes to lie to me. Remember how I said that YouTube has lied to me before about how many emojis I need or have and how many I need to get another one? Yeah, I think this is one of those cases where they're lying to me again. So I'll keep my eye on it. I don't know what to tell you if it doesn't work. Anyway, let's take a look at what we got coming up here on the channel. So on Tuesday, we've got Kent with Bent coming up. That will be Tuesday, the 3rd? Yep, the 3rd of December. Will be Kent with Bent. That'll be at 6 p.m. my time, so that's 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. So do be aware, because we're in Standard Time. Kent with Bent is going to be an hour earlier than you're used to, because it's based on when Bent is available, not when everyone else is available. Then on Thursday, we're going to be doing Bat Evolution, Endosymbiosis, and Human, Species, which is going to be my review of an Answers News episode. So, if you like my take on Answers News, go for it. This one will not be covered, as far as I know, by Paul Enns, because there's no Ken Ham in it. As far as I can tell, he only covers Answers News if Ken Ham is there, and he's almost never there anymore, which is why Ham and Eggs has kind of dropped off. But that's okay, because I don't care if Ken Ham is there. In fact, actually, I kind of reverse care, in that if he's there, I probably won't cover it, because I'll leave it to Paul. So, that's going to be on Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, that's Thursday. Friday, over on Top Hats Off, we are going to be doing Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Not Strange New Worlds, I'm sorry. Star Trek Adventures. Strange New Worlds is a show that's on Paramount+. Star Trek Adventures with the crew of the USS Lexington. The episode we will be doing is called No Good Deed, in which the crew of the Lexington is exploring uncharted space when they detect a 4-year-old distress signal from a previously unexplored M-class planet. And then they arrive to find a now mostly derelict space station on a decaying orbit around a ecologically devastated planet. And they had to figure out what the heck is going on and how they can fix it or not, while still trying to stay within the bounds of the Prime Directive, which will be a bit tricky for them. So if that sounds like it's interesting to you, come hang out on Top Hats Off. We have memberships and super chats over there, so you can do that stuff if you like that stuff. Then on that's Friday, so Saturday. Currently, the plan is to do probably what's going to be the final round of this, because I don't really want to turn this into like a 5-episode series or something. But we'll invite Kip back. We'll get one last round of this in, and then we won't finish this video, but I don't really plan to, because at this point, it's getting a little bit on the repetitive side. But I want to do one more so we can get some opinions and feedback from Kip. And then we'll go on to some other video, but that'll be Saturday, a week from now, at the same time as this, so that's 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And also do remember that Jackson with Jackson is going to be replacing Kent with Bent for the second week of December, so it's on the 10th. And that is because normally Jackson with Jackson would have been on the 24th, but I feel like Jackson might want to spend some time with like his new wife and family and whatnot on the 24th, given that it's, Christmas Eve and his wife is a Christian. And his wife's family is a Christian, and I believe most of his family are Christians. So, I figured we'll leave that alone. And despite the fact that Bent is also a Christian, he's still going to do Kent with Bent. So, I appreciate that. All right. Well, I think that covers pretty much everything that's coming up. I hope everyone has a wonderful, safe rest of your weekend. I hope to see all of you on Tuesday. We are not doing Power Rangers because Bent isn't around to watch Power Rangers with us because, again, he's hanging out with Bob Knob. So,
Nice.
I will talk to all of you later. Bye, everybody. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Benthoven, Furrevara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Elron Teller, Ian Chen, Calvin Brostig von Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Sphincter of Doom, Flawless, Edwin M., North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.